Okay. American Gothic, episode 18, Echo of Your Last Goodbye. So this one is, I think wasn't originally aired with, in the original showing. So I think sometimes it's on the end of the DVD at like episode 21. But it should kind of go here as far as I'm aware in the production order. The title comes from a song called This House is Haunted by the Echo of Your Last Goodbye, which is played on the jukebox when Merlin approaches Ben in the bar. This is a pretty slow episode. We don't really learn anything new. It's more that we see other characters learn new things and develop a little bit. So yeah, I mean, it's still really good. It's just not like my favorite. So we open on a pretty cheesy, spooky opener. Ben gets a call while he's on a date with a woman he met who replied to his personal ad, which I kind of love because that's kind of just seems so Ben to be putting personal ads in the paper. He gets a call and they head out to an old abandoned place. She's like really keen to go with them. So there's a smell coming from the place, but only he can smell it. So that's our first kind of clue that something is up. Yeah, and then Ben sees some ghostly figures. And when he looks through the window of the place, he sees the sheriff breaking Merlin's neck. And then his date does this like thing where her neck breaks, but then it's Merlin, like she's a ghost. It's really bad CGI, but it's atmospheric. Kind of. Another little plot point here is a girl called Tina. We learn a bit more about her later, but we just see her like living in the building and stuff. So yeah, Tina is, we learn more about her at the school with Caleb. We meet her at the school trying to steal from the vending machine, and she's a bully especially to Boone, who's kind of a little bit smaller, but she tries to bully Caleb as well. She makes some pretty personal insults to Caleb. And it's funny because Selena is there for a moment and she just like makes all these double entendres like to Caleb that he wouldn't understand because he's 10, but I'm like, she's just so intense. Later, Caleb talks to Gale about Boone being mad at him because he stood up for Boone. I think Boone feels kind of embarrassed or whatever because he's being bullied by a girl or something. So the sheriff appears and says some, like, kind of encourages Caleb to he says you'll catch more flies with honey than vinegar. So the suggestion is to kind of give the bully what she wants to kind of get her on side or whatever. Later, Caleb appears to do this by helping her steal from the vending machine, but he actually traps her hand in the machine, which is what she did with Boone earlier. And he allows the machine or he makes the machine like break her hand. And while he does this, he talks like the sheriff. So we kind of learn that maybe the intensity of him deciding between his nature of like if he wants to be like the sheriff or, you know, the kind of good and evil fight within him is kind of coming to a head, so to speak. But yeah, later he feels remorse. The sheriff encourages him not to, but we learn that Tina was abandoned by her mother, who's an alcoholic. She just like left her in the abandoned house, so she was living there, and she wouldn't have lived much longer because it's super cold and stuff. So yeah, Caleb later apologizes to Tina as well, saying he feels like something made him do it. And that's kind of important because free will is talked about a little bit in this episode about who has will and who doesn't. Particularly in, we learn that Gale is like really enamored with the sheriff, but it's this kind of weird, they have this weird thing that I don't really get. So she's like, Gale is like, she doesn't like the sheriff, and she thinks like in previous episodes that he's like killing people and stuff, which he actually is doing some of that stuff. But then I guess like they're sleeping together, and she sometimes said stuff that implies that she doesn't think he's so bad anymore or something. But yeah, it's just kind of weird. I find the relationship weird, and I think the point is like the sheriff kind of says to her like she's under his power and she doesn't really have a choice. So yeah, he obviously has some kind of plan, and I guess Merlin is aware that after he's done with her he might just kill her, so she kind of wants Ben to help Gale. But anyway, to sort of get back to our main plot, which is more about Ben, he starts seeing Merlin's face on everyone everywhere, like just she's hounding him. She wants him to start telling the truth and standing up to the sheriff. We learn that no one from the sheriff's office sent him to the house the night before. The sheriff wants to know which house exactly, you know, and Ben tells him about the vision and Merlin, and the sheriff warns him not to look into it anymore. It seems like Ben hasn't been paying his bills, so that might come back later as well. Let's see. But yeah, basically Merlin wants him to look at some documents, and there's a microfiche machine, and I was kind of wondering, are they still a thing? Like, is everything digitized now? Microfiche is kind of cool, but I was just thinking you just don't see it anymore and stuff. Anyway, moving on. So Gale helps him with investigating this house, basically, because no offense, Ben, but you're pretty useless. But I love this character, but he's just such a goof. Yeah, so they head over to the place, the abandoned place, I mean. They find out it was owned by Caleb's mom, and the smell is still there that only Ben can smell. We learn it was a sanctuary for homeless kids. Ben sees a diseased looking Merlin there. I'm not sure what that's about other than just to be scary. And a vision of not Caleb, a vision of the sheriff throwing someone out of the window happens as well. So between that and Gale finding some drawings that are there, they get this sort of backstory that we already know, that the sheriff raped Judith and killed her after she had his baby, which is Caleb. So Merlin is kind of just keeps coming back and encouraging Ben to it's kind of repetitive, to stand up to the sheriff and stuff like that. She wants him to help Caleb. She doesn't want anything to happen to Gale, that kind of thing. And there's a nice little scene where she's in she's a nurse or something, and she has 40s hair and makeup on. It's really nice. Anyway, later Gale confronts the sheriff about that he's Caleb's father, which is kind of we already know this, so this scene feels like it could have been shorter, but he doesn't really give her a straight answer. But then they also have this thing where she says she wouldn't change him into being a better person even if she could. So I'm and then he's he didn't do it. So I'm what is happening with these two? I don't understand. I understand that there's some weird thing where the sheriff has a thing with the Temple family or whatever, Caleb and Gale's family, but it's just really weird. I don't know. Anyway, Ben goes back to the house again, and Merlin shows him all the dead children in the neighborhood that Judith would have saved if she hadn't died. It's very, very Goosebumps level special effects. And then Tina is actually there, and her hand is broken and she almost has hypothermia. So Ben takes her to hospital, and later at the hospital he stands up to the sheriff and he's hey, I'm not gonna lie for you anymore. Buck threatens to decapitate him because he just doesn't really do these things by halves. And yeah, basically Ben and Merlin are fine after that, which is nice. And let's see, is there any other little bits I've missed? Ben offers to pay for Tina's medical care, so I feel he's taking on some of the role that Judith would have played in the community. And And I like Ben. I think he's cool. I don't know. Like, he's a goof, but his heart is in the right place. I just feel like he got railroaded by the sheriff. So, I mean, the sheriff is a supernatural kind of person. Gotta give Ben a break a little bit. Yeah, so it's nice. I think Tina's faith in humanity is restored by Ben being so nice to her and helping her and that kind of thing. So let's see. Yeah, I think it's hard for Caleb because of that internal fight. We're not sure which way he's gonna go. Oh yeah, the only other real thing is just this kind of short, there's a short few little bits. We learn that Dr. Peel is like crazy about Selena and that that's all going really well, which is nice. He sends her roses and stuff, so he's more traditional. And she turns up at his work at the hospital to tell him to just like be careful about falling in love with someone like her, I guess. She says all this stuff about like pleasure and pain, like she's so weird. Just the way she like approaches things is weird. I mean, so it's really odd. For some reason, he makes a date with her to play pool and then he stands her up, but we never find out what that was about. So presumably that's going to be in the next, you know, couple episodes or something. So yeah, it's kind of a bit of a mishmashy episode. The three plots are all like wound in pretty tightly. For some of the episodes, they're quite separate strands. I don't know, like, what did we learn? Like, Caleb's mom was nice. Like, that's good. Like, I don't know. The stuff with the haunted house is good, but it just feels like maybe there should be more of that. Have a bit more, like, monster of the week. You know? I don't know. Anyway, that's episode 18.